I never liked surprises. Not because I feared them, but because the ones that come late in life tend to cost more than they're worth. So when my phone buzzed with Evan's name lighting up the screen after nearly 6 months of silence, I felt it like a disturbance in the air, a shift in a room you didn't realize had gone cold. "Hey, Dad. You free Friday night?" "No, hello." "No, how are you?" Just a question that felt too smooth. Evan had a way of speaking like he was already halfway to closing a deal. Born with charm, polished by business school, and now the proud co-CEO of the company I built with my own damn hands, Logan Sons Construction. The and Sons part used to mean something. "Dinner at my place," he continued. "Bring someone if you want. Thought it'd be nice to catch up, maybe invite Riley too." That last part hit me harder than it should have. Riley. The kid I hadn't seen sober in 3 years. The same kid who stole company checks from Kara's desk drawer, forged my signature, and tried to blame a subcontractor. We covered it up for the family name, but the trust? That was another casualty. "Riley?" I said slowly. "Yeah. He's doing better. Just out of rehab. 6 months clean." I rubbed the back of my neck, watching the late sun cut golden lines across the kitchen floor. That was the thing about age, you saw the light better when it was dying. "Thought we could just sit down. No drama," Evan added. "Talk legacy stuff. Succession planning." There it was. The real reason. My gut clenched. Still, a part of me, some aging, softened version of the father I used to be, wanted to believe this was about more than control and contracts. Maybe it was the season. Maybe it was the woman I'd been seeing. "I'll think about it," I said, then hung up without waiting for the closing pitch. Julia was in the next room, barefoot in one of my old flannels, sketching something on her tablet. She looked up when I walked in, bright eyes, messy hair, like a wildfire you wanted to get lost in. "You okay?" she asked. "My son wants a family dinner." She smiled softly. "Sounds like a start." I watched her for a moment, remembering the first time we met on a job site in Millbrook, her sleeves rolled up, hair in a knot, arguing with 3 engineers twice her age. She was 34, brilliant, ambitious, and she saw something in me. Not just the aging founder with a limp, but a man who still had fire under the ashes. "You want to come?" I asked. "With your sons?" Her eyebrow arched. "That sounds like a sitcom pilot waiting to go wrong." I laughed. "Could use someone who knows how to read a room." She leaned back and stretched, her shirt falling just enough to remind me this wasn't just companionship. Julia had reawakened something in me, not just desire, but clarity. I wasn't done yet. Not with life. Not with this family. Especially not with this company. By Thursday morning, I'd said yes to Evan. We were going. All of us. Even Riley. I picked him up that evening from a halfway house on the east side. He looked thinner than I remembered, jawline sharper, arms twitchy. The tattoos peeked out from under his sleeves, reminders of his stints, his circles, his pain. He didn't say much, just climbed in the truck and stared out the window. "You good?" I asked. He nodded. "Trying." It wasn't an answer, but it was more than I expected. We pulled into my driveway and Julia was waiting by the porch, already dressed in a sleek navy dress, heels in hand. She smiled at Riley, extended her hand like she didn't know his history. "Nice to finally meet you." Riley shook it, eyes flickering with suspicion. I caught that. He knew charm when he saw it, and he didn't trust it. Friday came fast. Evan's house was perched on a hillside, the kind that screamed wealth but whispered something colder. Too much glass. Too much stone. The kind of home built more for statements than for living. Julia slid her arm through mine as we approached the front door. Riley hung back, hands in his jacket pockets. Evan opened the door himself. Tan, tailored, and beaming. "Dad." "Julia." "Riley. Glad you made it." We stepped inside. Marble floors, high ceilings, a wine rack that looked like modern art. His wife, Cassie, floated in from the kitchen with a practiced smile and 2 glasses of something pale and expensive. Dinner was salmon over farro with microgreens. The kind of meal that looks better than it tastes. Riley barely touched his food. Julia played hostess, laughing at Evan's jokes, complimenting the furniture, asking about Cassie's art installations. I watched Evan talk about the company like it was already his. "We're moving into commercial development next quarter. Big opportunities in mixed-use spaces. Legacy is about adaptability." Legacy. That word again. He turned to me then, glass raised. "To the man who built this all. And to what comes next." Julia clinked her glass against his. I hesitated, then raised mine too. Riley didn't. After dessert, I stepped out onto the balcony to breathe. The city lights flickered in the valley below like embers, and the night air felt heavy. My phone buzzed in my pocket. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize. I opened the message. "Watch your drink. Don't sign anything." I stared at it for a long time. Then turned slowly, back toward the room filled with wine and legacy and charm. And suddenly, I didn't feel like a guest. I felt like a target. I didn't go back inside right away. The message burned in my hand like a live wire. "Watch your drink. Don't sign anything. No name. No explanation." Just those 2 lines, as direct and cold as a bullet in the dark. I glanced through the balcony doors. Inside, the dinner party buzzed on. Julia was seated close to Evan now, closer than I liked. Her knee brushed his under the table and neither flinched. Cassie was laughing too loudly at something Riley had said, her wine glass half empty. The chandelier light bounced off the glassware and cutlery, everything shining just a little too bright. Too perfect. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, steadied my breath, and walked back in like I hadn't just been warned my drink might be poisoned. The glass was still there. Merlot, untouched. I left it. "You all right, Dad?" Evan asked, standing as if rehearsed. "Just needed some air," I said. "The view's something." He smiled like a man with everything to lose but convinced he wouldn't. "Yeah. Worth every penny." Julia leaned across the table, eyes soft. "You okay, Martin?" There was a moment, brief, but real, where her voice almost cracked. "Almost." "I'm fine," I said. "Just pacing myself." "Doctor's orders." Julia nodded and turned her attention back to her plate, but not before I saw it, that flicker of annoyance behind her eyes. Subtle. Well practiced. But there. Riley cleared his throat. "This salmon's dry." Cassie laughed again, too quick, too rehearsed. "It's poached, actually. Healthier." Riley raised an eyebrow. "Poached tastes like regret." Even Evan chuckled at that. "You've still got that sharp mouth, huh?" Riley didn't smile. "I'm clean, not lobotomized." Silence dropped over the table like fog. Julia quickly reached for her wine. "Well, I think it's nice. The whole evening. You all being together again." "Yeah," Riley muttered. Real Kodak moment. Cassie stood. "Who wants creme brulee?" No one answered. The tension hadn't broken, it had only gone quiet. I watched as she disappeared into the kitchen, the sound of clinking ramekins following behind her. Julia stood and followed. "I'll help." Evan leaned in then, lowering his voice. "So what do you think? About the salmon?" I asked. "No. About all of this. The timing. There it was. Not even an attempt to hide it now. What timing, Evan? He smiled that corporate smile, the kind that never reaches the eyes. I mean, succession. You've done the heavy lifting for decades. Riley's still rebuilding, and Julia, well, Julia's got vision. Real leadership instincts. Leadership, I echoed. And what would I be? He sipped his wine, the glass delicate in his hands. Founder. Patriarch. Visionary emeritus. Sounds like a man they will out for ribbon cuttings. He didn't flinch. Only if you want that. You've got choices. We just want to honor your legacy. The way he said "we" twisted in my gut. I looked past him, into the kitchen. Julia was bent over the counter, torching sugar over the custards, Cassie chatting beside her, fingers playing with the stem of her wine glass. And they were laughing now. Too easily. Too freely. I'd seen that laugh before, in boardrooms where wolves wore neckties and spoke in projections. Then Riley spoke, his voice low. You really trust her? Evan turned, startled. Who? Julia, he said. The woman you're letting sit in my mother's chair. I didn't say anything. Neither did Evan, for a second. She's smart, Evan said finally. And she's loyal. To the company. To you? Riley asked. Again, Evan didn't answer. The women returned with desserts, and everyone pretended nothing had been said. I forced myself to take a bite of the brulee. It was decent. Burnt just right. Julia smiled beside me. You're awfully quiet. Just soaking it all in. Well, she said, resting her hand lightly on my arm, we were thinking. Maybe it's time to formalize a few things. Just so there's no confusion going forward. Confusion? I asked. About the company. And your estate. Your wishes. Evan chimed in. It's not pressure. Just preparation. And you want me to sign something tonight? I asked, voice calm. Julia gave a small laugh. Oh, no. Not tonight. But soon. Evan has the draft. Just something to think about. I looked at my son. He didn't blink. Didn't look away. Cassie poured more wine. Riley pushed his plate away, untouched. I set my spoon down and folded my napkin neatly. I'll read it, I said. Later. When I've had time. Julia kissed my cheek. That's all we ask. I looked across the table at Riley. He wasn't smiling. But there was something in his eyes, something awake now. We left not long after. Julia drove. Riley rode with me. Halfway down the hillside road, he broke the silence. Did they ask you to sign anything? Not yet, I said. He nodded slowly. They will. I glanced at him. You think they're working together? Riley exhaled. I know they are. I didn't ask how. He didn't offer. But somewhere inside me, the last ember of doubt went cold. At home, I poured myself a glass of water. No wine. No bourbon. Just cold water from the tap. I sat at the kitchen table alone, staring at the message on my phone one more time. Watch your drink. Don't sign anything. I didn't know who sent it. But I was starting to know why. By Monday morning, the memory of that dinner had already begun to rot inside me. It wasn't just the message. It wasn't even the staged warmth or the way Julia kept trying to wrap her hand around mine at the table like a caregiver, not a lover. It was everything, the language they used, the timing, the silence that stretched just long enough after every suggestion of power transfer. And the worst part? I almost wanted to believe it wasn't what it looked like. Almost. That's the curse of being a father. No matter how sharp your instincts, you hesitate to use them when they point at your own blood. Tuesday morning, I found the draft sitting on my desk in a white folder. No note, no envelope. Just, Dad, scrawled across the front in Evan's familiar, meticulous penmanship. The top page read, Logan Sons, Succession and Estate Planning Proposal. I didn't open it. Not then. Instead, I walked down to the job site on 12th and Garrison. A mid-size office building we'd landed late last year, and one of the few projects still under my direct oversight. Riley was there, hard hat on, boots scuffed, hands wrapped around a concrete float like it was a lifeline. Hey, I called. He didn't look up right away. When he did, there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Focus. Not perfect, not healed, but solid. Present. Didn't expect you today, he said. I need eyes I can trust. He glanced around, then nodded. What's up? Julia and Evan. They're planning something. Riley chuckled, bitter. No shit. I held up my phone and showed him the message. He read it twice, then again, slower. That from Kara? Kara? She's still in the loop. Still hates Julia. Might be trying to help. That surprised me. Kara had been with the company for almost 20 years. Office manager, payroll queen, the kind of woman who remembered your kid's birthday and your second divorce's alimony date. She'd also been the first to warn me, quietly, when Julia started showing up in Evan's office more often than made sense. I'll talk to her, Riley said. I nodded. Quietly. Of course. Later that day, I stepped into the office. It felt different now. Too clean. Too new. Julia's influence was in everything, from the minimalist glass desks to the potted snake plants placed in strategic corners for energy flow. I found Kara in the break room, rearranging packets of sugar into rows like a woman trying to maintain order in a world unraveling. You have a minute? I asked. She didn't look up. Depends. Are we being watched? My chest tightened. You tell me. She nodded slowly. Then reached into her purse and handed me a small flash drive. You'll want to see what's on here. Security footage from last week. Of what? Your son and your girlfriend. In your office. After hours. I didn't ask why she had it. Kara's loyalty was never in question. That night, I watched the footage alone in my study. The camera angle caught just enough. Evan leaning against the corner of my desk. Julia standing between his knees. A kiss, quick but unmistakable. Followed by a long whisper from her, and Evan laughing, head thrown back, teeth bared. The kind of laugh you don't fake unless you're absolutely sure no one's watching. I paused the frame. Julia's hand was on his tie. Her mouth was close to his ear. I didn't smash the laptop. I didn't throw the drive. I didn't even stand up. I just sat there, breathing through it. You learn not to show your pain once you reach a certain age. Pain is currency in this world, and if you bleed in front of wolves, they'll eat faster. Over the next week, things escalated in subtle, calculated increments. Julia started asking questions, about bank accounts, property deeds, legal authority, in case anything happened. Evan mentioned that we should future-proof the company, with a dual signature clause for large transactions. Riley found himself increasingly assigned to off-site work, solo, menial, unimportant. Then the paperwork showed up again. Not a draft this time. An actual document. Formal. Finalized. Power of attorney and corporate succession authorization. Julia handed it to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We just want to protect what you built. And if I don't sign it? She blinked. Nothing changes. Except maybe, the risk increases. It was the first time I heard the threat in her voice without the sugarcoating. That night, Riley came by the house unannounced. No text. No call. Just a knock. He looked tired, like the last 7 days had scraped him raw. "Kara found more," he said. He pulled out a folder. Inside, photos, messages, copies of financial transfers Julia had initiated from her personal account to a consulting firm registered under Evan's name. Ghost contracts. Shell companies. They weren't just planning for me to retire. They were preparing to erase me. "Why now?" I asked. Riley hesitated. Then he said, "Because Julia doesn't just want the company. She wants the name. The control. And Evan, he's too far gone. He thinks she's the legacy. And you?" "I think I used to be the problem," he said. "But now, I might be the solution." I leaned back and looked at my son, not the screw-up who'd broken my trust, but the man who was still standing, still fighting. "You clean?" I asked. He nodded. "One day at a time." I nodded back. "Then we do this quiet. Smart. No explosions." Riley smirked. "What's the plan?" I looked down at the flash drive. The folder. The draft. "The plan," I said, "starts with letting them think they've already won. Because the best traps aren't sudden. They're slow. Comfortable. Invisible. Until they snap shut. It started with breakfast. Julia brought me coffee in bed. Just like that, no warning, no sarcasm, no strings. She'd never done it before, and the tray was absurd: steel-cut oats, half a grapefruit, and coffee with almond milk instead of cream. The kind of meal that whispers, "We care about your health," while holding a knife behind its back. "Thought you deserved a break," she said, placing the tray across my lap. I didn't touch the cup. "Thanks," I said instead. "But next time, just eggs and toast." Her smile didn't move. "Next time." By noon, she'd booked me a doctor's appointment without asking, "Just a wellness check," she said, "part of your retirement benefits." And by dinner, she was pressing me to consider making her a joint owner on the cabin upstate. If anything happened, she whispered, I'd want to be able to access things quickly. They weren't even hiding it anymore. And I wasn't pretending anymore either. I had Riley back on payroll, quietly, off the books. Kara ran him through archived emails, project logs, and old invoices Julia had streamlined over the last year. He came in late, left early, always covered in dust or paint, grunt work, Evan called it, even though Riley was doing the things he used to do before power turned him into a speakerphone tyrant. And then it happened. The plant. It was Thursday when security called me. Said they'd found something in Riley's locker. A small plastic bag. Pills. Prescription grade, unlabeled. I was on site within 20 minutes. Riley was already in the foreman's trailer, arms crossed, face blank. Evan stood beside him, posture smug, holding the plastic evidence bag like it was a trophy. "We have zero tolerance, Dad," Evan said. "You know that." "I don't use any more," Riley said flatly. "I'm sure," Evan replied. "But how'd it get in your locker?" "I could ask the same about the camera footage you deleted last week," Riley shot back. Evan blinked, just once. "But I caught it." I turned to the site foreman. "Did anyone see Riley put it there?" He shook his head. "No, sir. Found it during inventory check." "And the locker's locked, right?" "Yes." "So who has keys?" "Just Riley." "And Kara." Evan laughed. "Unless someone stole one." Riley stood up. "This is bullshit." Evan raised his hands. "Look, I don't want to make this ugly. But this is the second time. First it was embezzlement. Now this? I looked between them, then back at the pills. "I'll handle it," I said. "Privately." "Dad." I said privately. Riley followed me out without a word. We got in the truck, doors slamming like punctuation marks. He didn't speak until we were halfway down the highway. "They planted it," he muttered. "I know. They want me out. I know. Are you going to fire me again?" I didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, I pulled onto the shoulder and parked. We sat there in the quiet hum of the engine, both staring out at the flat stretch of road ahead. "They're setting you up to fall," I said. "Because if you're discredited, no one questions Evan's takeover." Riley's jaw tightened. "I should have recorded him." "You did." He turned. "What?" "Kara's been wearing a mic since last week." His eyes widened. I pulled a small device from the glove box, a recorder no bigger than a cigarette lighter. "He said you were unstable," I said. "Told her you were a liability. Said, and I quote, 'he'll slip.' He always does. Then we won't even need a signature." Riley exhaled. "Jesus. He's counting on your history. Your reputation." Riley leaned back against the seat, eyes closing. "Then we give him what he wants." "What?" "Let me fall. Publicly." I shook my head. "No. It's the only way to get close enough. Let him think I'm done. Let him believe I've cracked." I stared at him. "You sure you're strong enough for that?" "I'm not sure of anything," he said. "But I'm tired of hiding." We drove back in silence. I dropped him off 2 blocks from the halfway house. He didn't say goodbye. Just nodded, got out, and vanished into the twilight. The next morning, the rumor had spread like gasoline. Riley relapsed. Drugs in his locker again. He'll be gone by Monday. I let it spread. I even let Evan call a staff meeting to discuss the future. He wore a navy suit, sipped coffee from a mug that said "World's Best Boss," and made vague comments about new blood and fresh vision. Julia sat beside him, legs crossed, nodding along like a co-pilot on a hijacked plane. Kara and I said nothing. Until later that night. In the office. When the lights were low and the building was empty. "Play it," I told Kara. She hit the button. And there it was, Evan's voice, clear as day, "He's a liability. He'll slip. He always does." And then Julia's voice, softer but loaded, "If he doesn't, we can always nudge him." I copied the audio to 3 separate drives, each labeled with a single word. Insurance. When I got home, Julia was waiting on the porch. "I missed you today," she said, kissing my cheek. "I was with Riley." She blinked. "Again? He's still my son." "So is Evan." I nodded. "Yes. And you're still my girlfriend." She tilted her head. That sounded like a question. "It's not," I said, unlocking the door. "It's a warning." Inside, the house felt colder. I poured myself a glass of water, then opened the fridge. The almond milk was gone. Replaced with cream. I didn't tell anyone I planned the dinner. That was the trick, to make it feel spontaneous. Casual. Like a white flag instead of a chess move. I invited Evan and Julia myself. Told them I wanted to clear the air, that maybe it was time we all stopped pretending this wasn't happening. Julia texted back within 5 minutes. "That sounds healing. I'll bring wine." Healing. I almost laughed. I told Riley to stay away. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I needed him out of the spotlight for this part. He didn't argue. Just handed me one of the flash drives and said, "If anything happens, use this. And check your watch." I wore the smartwatch under my cuff. Not for steps. Not for heart rate. For recording. The table was set in the formal dining room, the one Linda used to reserve for Christmas Eve. I cleaned the silverware myself. Set out the good plates. Everything needed to look deliberate, but not suspicious. Julia showed up first, in a black dress that clung to her like a secret. "You look centered," she said, brushing her lips against my cheek. "Trying," I replied. Evan arrived 10 minutes later, 2 bottles of Merlot in a gift bag and a grin like a campaign poster. "Old vines. Napa," he said. "Figured we deserved something top shelf." I nodded and took the bottles. "Thanks. Hope you're hungry." They sat close to each other, not touching, but you could feel it, the gravitational pull of co-conspirators. I brought out the roast, the salad, even baked bread myself. "This is amazing," Julia said, tearing a piece of bread. I watched her pour the wine. 1 glass for Evan. 1 for herself. And 1 for me. I didn't touch mine. Not right away. "Thanks for coming," I said, lowering myself into the chair at the head of the table. "It's been a long few weeks." Evan raised his glass. "To legacy. And what comes next?" I watched Julia slide my glass toward me. Her eyes held mine just a second too long. "To next chapters," she echoed. I lifted the glass but didn't drink. Instead, I reached for the salad bowl. "Funny thing," I said, dropping lettuce onto my plate, "about legacy. It's not always about control. Sometimes it's about memory." Julia sipped her wine. "Memory fades." I smiled. "Not all of it." They talked while we ate. Evan about commercial opportunities in Austin. Julia about a new project proposal she was drafting on my behalf. Every other sentence had the word transition baked into it. When dessert came out, lemon tart with toasted meringue, I finally lifted my glass. Julia watched me. I held it near my lips. Paused. Then coughed. "Too dry for me," I said, setting it down. Evan frowned. "What, the wine?" "No. Just need some water." I stood. "Be right back." I walked to the kitchen slowly. Let them watch me leave. Then moved fast. In the pantry, behind a stack of storage bins, sat the decoy glass, the one I'd swapped earlier. I pulled it out, dumped the contents into a sealed mason jar, then replaced it with a fresh pour of untouched Merlot. Then I returned, holding the full glass and a glass of water. "Cheers," I said, raising the new pour. Evan looked confused. Julia smiled. But it didn't reach her eyes. We finished dessert. They left by 10. Hugs all around. Promises of finalizing everything in the next week. As soon as their car pulled away, I sat in the kitchen and played back the audio on my watch. It was all there. Julia's voice, low and even, "He's tired. Worn out. It's just a matter of time. A little push, he'll fade quietly. Evan, he won't sign. Julia, he will. Or he won't wake up." Silence. Then Evan again, "You're sure this dosage won't be traced?" Julia, "Not in wine. Not if it's natural." My hands were steady as I listened. I didn't even blink. I called Riley first. "We have it. You okay?" "For now." Then I called Kara. Asked her to prep a medical file. Told her what I suspected, and that I had proof. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Bring the sample in. I'll handle the rest." At 11:47 p.m. I finally lay down. But I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared. But because I knew something they didn't. They thought they'd just attempted murder. They didn't know I'd seen it coming. And that now, the clock had started ticking. The hospital was cold. Sterile in all the ways a place like that should be, but it felt different when you walked in pretending to be poisoned. I checked myself in before sunrise. Chest tight. Vision a little blurred. No theatrics, just enough truth to make the performance believable. My blood pressure was up, heart rate erratic. Probably from lack of sleep, but I let the nurses draw every vial they wanted. The sample from the decoy glass. I handed it over like it was routine. Said I had a bad reaction to a wine I couldn't identify. Kara's contact at the lab flagged it for further analysis, marked urgent, and routed it off the books. By noon, I had a hospital bracelet and a room with a window view of the parking lot. I didn't mind. I wasn't there to relax. I was there to confirm I'd nearly been murdered. Julia showed up first. She came in with a flurry of concern, gripping a bouquet too bright for the gray walls. Her hair was perfect. Not a strand out of place. Her eyes, though. They flickered when she saw me sitting upright, alert, fully dressed except for the hospital gown hanging off one shoulder. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Martin, we didn't hear from you after dinner." I tilted my head. Figured I'd keep things low-key. "You scared us," she said, stepping closer. "Are you okay?" "I will be." She hesitated. "Then, the wine. I thought it tasted off. Figured I'd get it checked." A pause. "Probably nothing," she said too quickly. "Old cork. Happens sometimes." I looked her dead in the eye. "Maybe." She sat beside me. Her fingers brushed my arm. "This doesn't change anything between us. You know that, right?" I smiled, thin, without teeth. "Of course." She stayed 15 minutes. Said all the right things. Touched all the right places. But her eyes were calculating the whole time. Scanning my face like it was a spreadsheet she needed to balance. Evan came an hour later. He brought coffee and a stack of business printouts. Tried to talk quarterly reports like nothing had happened. I let him talk. Let him ramble. Then I said, "Riley's off the books. Don't touch him." He blinked. What? "I know about the pills. In his locker." "That wasn't me." I stared. He swallowed. "Okay, maybe it was suggested. But he's a liability." "You said it yourself." "I never said that." "You didn't have to." I didn't answer. Just turned toward the window. Evan stood awkwardly, holding the printouts like they weighed more than they did. "We're trying to help, Dad." "Are you?" He left without finishing his coffee. By evening, the lab results came back. Kara called me on the hospital phone. "There was something in the wine," she said. "A compound related to zopiclone. Not lethal in small doses. But mixed with alcohol." I didn't need the rest. "You still have the voice recording?" she asked. "Multiple copies," I said. "Secured." "Then what's the move?" "We let them spin the story." That night, I called Riley. "You sure about this?" he asked. "They want a villain," I said. "We'll give them one." The next day, I checked myself out of the hospital against doctor's orders. I made sure someone snapped a photo as I did, me in a wheelchair, Riley pushing me, looking like a nervous wreck. It hit local press by sundown. Construction mogul hospitalized, Logan Sons legacy in question. The article was vague. Something about health concerns, power of attorney rumors. A photo of Julia holding my hand bedside made it to page 2. But the real headline? That came the following morning. Breaking, Riley Logan suspended after alleged drug use on site. It was planted. I knew that. Everyone in the office did. Evan orchestrated it, and Julia's fingerprints were all over the narrative. Riley played his part perfectly, storming out, refusing to comment, leaving his locker cleaned out. The internet swarmed. Forums picked it up. Logan Sons had a scandal. A broken family. An addict son. And the company? Teetering on the edge. Evan went on the local news the next night. Spoke in a tight navy suit about stability and grace under pressure. He called me the backbone of the business and Riley troubled, but loved. Said we were navigating change carefully. He didn't mention Julia by name. But she was in the shot. Standing off to the side. Wearing pearls. It was all performance. I watched it unfold from my study, TV muted, laptop open, 3 audio files queued and ready. Riley came by that night. You let them pin it on me, he said, slamming the door behind him. For now. You let the world think I'm high again. Because that's what they expect. He paced, fuming. Riley, I said quietly, you know what they expect me to do now? What? Sign the company over. He stopped. But I'm not going to, I said. Not yet. First, we make them think they've won. He blinked. What are you talking about? We're planning a signing ceremony, I said. A public one. Riley stared at me. And at that ceremony, I continued, we don't just flip the script. What do we do? We light the whole damn thing on fire. The invitation was printed on thick ivory cardstock, with gold foil edging and the Logan Sons logo stamped in the center like a seal of approval from God himself. Legacy signing ceremony, honoring the past, empowering the future. Julia wrote the tagline. Evan approved it. I didn't object. I let them think I'd surrendered. The gala was set to take place on the mezzanine of our newest project, a commercial high-rise just weeks from completion. Concrete floors, steel beams, half-exposed ductwork, all polished for one night into something presentable, industrial chic. It was Evan's idea. Symbolic, he said. A company built from the ground up, literally. What he didn't know was that we'd already started laying the foundation for his fall weeks before they laid the floor. Riley was out of the picture, as far as the public knew, his name scrubbed from the company's site, rumors about his relapse quietly echoing through contractors and suppliers. Evan played the concerned older brother in meetings, and Julia hovered like a grieving widow whose husband hadn't died yet but had already written his will. But behind the scenes, Kara was busy. She'd found the deleted camera footage, Julia in the office hallway, gloved hand slipping something into Riley's locker. It wasn't security footage, it was backup from the smart lights, synced by accident to a cloud server no one thought to wipe. I watched the footage 3 times. Each time, my blood boiled less. Rage became resolve. Then came the email thread. Kara had dug deep, recovered old backups Evan thought were gone. Timestamps, CCs, project budgets doctored just enough to create phantom payments. Most of it funneled into a shell consulting firm with a name so bland it almost worked, Bright Tower Group LLC. On paper, it looked real. In practice, it was empty, except for 2 names on the registration, Julia Marks and a proxy account traced back to Evan's trust. We had it all. And we had Riley's lawyer, a pit bull named Garza, quietly assembling the package, documents, surveillance, recordings, and forensic account tracking. If this were a courtroom drama, we were prepping for closing arguments. But our stage would be concrete. The day of the gala, the mezzanine gleamed. Spotlights. Catered hors d'oeuvres. Champagne chilled in steel buckets. Everyone who mattered in the industry was there, investors, city council members, trade partners, even the local paper. Evan was in his element. Shaking hands, slapping backs, talking about the next generation of leadership. Julia was practically glowing in a silver dress, standing just behind him, nodding like a political spouse. Then there was me. Gray suit. No tie. Calm expression hiding the war chest behind my eyes. At 7:10 p.m. Evan clinked his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "tonight is a turning point. For our company. For our family." I stood beside him, quiet. He handed me a thick leather folder. "This," he said, "is more than a document. It's a legacy." Applause. I opened the folder slowly. Flipped through the pages. Power of attorney. Transfer of corporate control. Succession agreement. I didn't sign. I looked up. "Before I do anything," I said, "I want to say something." The room quieted. Even the music faded. "I built this company on integrity," I began. "Not shortcuts. Not deceit. Not ambition dressed up as loyalty." Julia shifted. Evan looked uncertain now, his smile strained. "I've been quiet for too long," I continued. "Letting people shape a narrative that was never theirs to own." I turned toward the crowd. "Which is why tonight, I'm announcing my successor." Gasps. Evan stepped forward, half smiling, half panicked. "Dad." I raised my hand. "My successor," I said, voice sharp now, "is Riley Logan." Silence. Then murmurs. Then, movement at the back of the room. Riley stepped through the doors in a dark suit, flanked by Garza and Kara. He walked like a man unburdened. Clean. Ready. Evan's jaw locked. Julia froze. Security began shifting, but then stopped when they saw the three uniformed officers quietly enter behind Riley. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just present. Julia took a step back. Garza handed over a folder to the lead officer. "Evidence of forgery, drug planting, conspiracy, financial fraud," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "Names attached. Dates included." A second officer approached Julia. "Julia Marks, you are under arrest." She didn't resist. But her face crumbled like plaster, shock, rage, betrayal all pouring out at once. As the cuffs clicked behind her back, Evan turned to me. "You bastard." I stepped closer. "You're not going to prison," I said. "But you're going to live with this." The officers escorted Julia out. The crowd was silent. Shocked. Then, slowly, they began to back away, faces pale, eyes avoiding contact. The fallout had started. I turned to Riley. "It's yours now. Don't break it." He nodded. Kara stood beside him. And somewhere near the back, I caught the faintest sound of applause. One person. Clapping. The gala was supposed to be a coronation. Instead, it became a trial. Not in a courtroom, but under the hot glare of industry eyes and whispered scandal. I watched it unfold like a man watching his own wake, calm and detached, because this wasn't the end of me. It was the unveiling of them. Julia was booked that night. 3 charges: forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and unlawful administration of a controlled substance. The wine sample and audio recording were enough to justify the cuffs. The paper trail made it airtight. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Architect of betrayal, Julia Marks arrested at Logan Gala. Family dynasty shattered, internal conspiracy rocks Logan and Sons. Riley Logan vindicated after alleged setup. Evan didn't return home. I know, because his wife Cassie called me, twice. "He's not answering," she said. "Do you know what's going on?" I didn't lie. He tried to steal what wasn't his. Now he's figuring out what it means to lose. She didn't respond. Just hung up. I imagined her sitting in their glass and stone house, wine untouched, suddenly wondering who the hell she married. That Monday, I returned to the office. People froze when I walked in. Not because they were afraid of me, but because they didn't know what would happen next. Fear isn't just about power. It's about unpredictability. And I'd let them believe I was finished. A relic. I wasn't. I called an emergency board meeting. Riley sat beside me, clean-shaven, steady. Kara stood at the door with a binder full of legal exhibits and files. Garza joined remotely, his voice clipped and cold. "Let's begin," I said. "No greetings. No pleasantries." I laid out the evidence: Julia's financial tampering, Evan's collusion, the setup targeting Riley. I played the audio recordings over the conference speaker. One board member turned pale. Another rubbed his temples and muttered, "Christ." When it was done, I stood. "Effective immediately," I said, "Evan Logan is removed from all executive capacities. His shares are frozen pending civil litigation." A pause. Then I added, "Riley Logan is now acting CEO." Someone clapped. No one stopped them. By afternoon, legal documents were filed. The press release was written and distributed before sunset. Leadership change at Logan Sons amid internal investigation. They didn't use the word scandal. But it was implied. Evan surfaced the next day. Not in public, he wasn't stupid, but in my driveway. Same navy suit from the gala, wrinkled now. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. He didn't knock. He just stood there, staring at the house. I stepped outside. "You gonna swing?" I asked. "Or sulk?" "I made a mistake," he said. "No," I said. "You made a plan. You only call it a mistake because it failed." He looked down. "I never wanted to hurt you. You did anyway. I thought I could fix it. With a fake company? A forged signature? Or the wine?" He flinched. "I didn't know she was going to do that. But you didn't stop her." His voice cracked. "I trusted her." "So did I," I said. "That's what makes us both fools." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "Divorce papers," he said. "Cassie filed this morning." I took it, glanced over the top. "So it's all gone." He nodded. "I lost everything." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You still have the shame. That stays." I didn't slam the door on him. That would have been mercy. I just turned and walked back inside, leaving him there to figure out what came next. Later that week, we froze his assets. Kara handed me the paperwork with a grim smile. "You really want to go this far?" she asked. "Yes." She raised an eyebrow. "No criminal charges?" "No," I said. "Let him live broke. Let him be remembered for what he tried to be, not what he was." Publicly, he was disgraced. Privately, I left him with just enough to survive. Not enough to rebuild. Not enough to plot. Just enough to wake up every morning and remember. Riley signed the foreclosure papers on Evan's home a week later. He didn't smile when he did it. He didn't even speak. He just flipped the page, initialed the bottom corner, and handed the folder to Kara. "Done," he said. The house Evan once bragged about, open concept, pure glass, unbeatable views, was on the market by Friday. Listed under foreclosure auction, not private sale. No prestige. No exit plan. Julia. She cut a deal. Testified in full. Gave names, files, passwords, access codes. Flipped on Evan in under a week. Her plea bargain spared her jail time but came with a heavy fine, professional disbarment, and a clause that barred her from operating in any executive or consulting capacity for a decade. I read her testimony. It was meticulous. Brilliant, even. And cold. No love in her betrayal. Just calculation. I sat with that for a long time, wondering how I ever thought she loved me. And then I stopped wondering. Because the truth was simpler. I let myself believe the lie. You'd be surprised how quiet destruction is. After the gala, after the arrest, after the documents were filed and the signatures finalized, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like debris settling after a controlled demolition. The dust hadn't cleared, but the bones of what used to be stood bare, every crack exposed, every secret collapsed under its own weight. Julia disappeared from the public eye. She never contacted me. Not a text. Not a letter. Not a single attempt to explain or justify. The last I heard, she'd moved to Arizona, somewhere with no skyline, no cameras, and no industry ties. The woman who once obsessed over legacy was now invisible. It felt right. Evan stayed in the city. I let him. He tried to fight the asset freeze at first, filed a motion through a second-tier lawyer who clearly hadn't read the fine print. Kara and Garza buried them in countermotions. Every claim he made fell flat. The documents we had were unshakable. The email chain. The voice recordings. Julia's sworn statement. He had no footing left. The courts upheld the freeze. His accounts were locked. His name was struck from Logan Sons official registry. And then the foreclosure went through. I didn't attend the auction. Riley did. He wore the same suit he'd worn the night of the gala, clean lines, no flash, no arrogance. Kara stood next to him, holding the envelope with the winning bid. The auctioneer barely looked up when the hammer dropped. Sold. Market price, $2. 8 million. Final bid, $1. 9 million. Purchased through a newly formed trust, Redline Equity, registered under Riley's name. Evan lost the house before he even realized it was happening. That was the final blow. Not the humiliation, not the arrest, not even the betrayal. It was Riley standing at the edge of the driveway, clipboard in hand, watching the movers haul Evan's life out box by box. The same Riley he'd once called a liability. The addict. The weak link. Now signing the transfer paperwork with steady hands. Evan didn't say a word. He just stood there, one duffel bag over his shoulder, as the doors to his glass and stone palace shut for the last time. I wasn't there, but Kara said he didn't cry. Didn't rage. Just walked down the hill until he disappeared behind the trees. A man erased. Meanwhile, the company didn't just survive. It thrived. Riley was smarter than people gave him credit for. He didn't try to be me. He didn't try to reinvent the wheel. He just listened. Leaned on the team. Consulted Kara on everything. Brought back contractors we'd lost under Julia's efficiency plans. And every Friday, without fail, he walked the sites himself. No cameras. No press. Just boots in the dust, sleeves rolled up. He was building something. Not just a company. But a reputation. He started something new, too, a trade school, privately funded through company profits. Designed for kids like he used to be. Clean slates. Second chances. Technical programs. Real skills. No bullshit. He named it the Redline Institute. Said it was about giving people something to hold on to when everything else is falling apart. Kara ran the admin side. Riley taught a few workshops himself. They didn't hang a plaque with my name on it. They didn't need to. I stayed out of it. Didn't attend the ribbon cutting. Didn't take interviews. The closest I came to public attention was one small quote on the website footer. For those willing to rebuild. M. Logan. That was enough. Sometimes I drove past the building at night, just to see the lights on. To hear the sound of machines whirring and people laughing inside. To feel, for once, like something good came out of the wreckage. Evan never tried to rebuild. After the foreclosure, he moved into a one-bedroom rental on the west side. No car. No assistance. No Cassie. I passed him once, on 4th Street, walking with a takeout bag in one hand, phone in the other. He looked thinner. Older. I didn't stop. He didn't look up. But I saw the way his shoulders drooped. The way he carried the weight of failure like it was welded to his spine. And I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt something worse. Recognition. Because he wasn't born this way. I made him. In my silence, in my distance, in the way I let Julia into the company without questioning her motives. I gave her access. I gave Evan control. I gave them power and never taught them how to hold it. They didn't steal the company. I handed them the keys. I just didn't think they'd burn the house down with me still inside. I sat with that truth for a long time. Some nights it hurt. Others, it just lingered. But I never let it win. Not after everything Riley and I had built back from ash. The grave was quiet. No wind, no birds, just the occasional rustle of leaves moving like secrets. I knelt at Linda's plot with a photo in one hand and a stone in the other. Not to mourn. To confess. Evan tried to kill me, I said aloud, but I'm not sending him to prison. I placed the stone beside her name. Jewish tradition, though we weren't religious. Still, I needed something grounded, something to weigh down the truth I was finally willing to admit. I won't press charges, I continued. But he won't walk away whole. No, that wasn't the plan. A trial would have been a show. A punishment with an expiration date. But what I gave him instead, what I built, was a slow unraveling. Not the public kind. The private, suffocating kind that creeps in every morning and lingers on the ceiling every night. Because if Evan was anything like me, and he was, God help us both, then legacy mattered more than freedom. And I made sure he lost every piece of it. The day after the gala, Riley signed the documents. Not just to become CEO, but to transfer every asset Evan had touched into receivership. His stock options. Liquidated. His bonuses. Claimed as clawbacks under the new ethics provision Kara helped draft. His stake in Bright Tower Group. Acquired by a dummy firm we'd set up weeks prior, now worth nothing. And the house? Sold to the lowest bidder. Riley made sure of that. The marble countertops, the three-tiered deck, the wine cellar Julia insisted on building, for Evan's image, gone. Auctioned off piece by piece. No headlines. No court date. Just disappearance. He didn't even get to protest. His name had been scrubbed from the company's website, his keycards disabled, his inbox closed. When he showed up to the office to talk, security asked him to leave the property. Politely. Publicly. That was the point. To make him irrelevant. Riley didn't gloat. He simply worked. Quietly. Consistently. At the ribbon cutting for the Red Line Institute, he gave a speech. A short one. Something about second chances and foundations that don't crack under pressure. Kara stood beside him, nodding like the world was finally back on its axis. They didn't invite press. They didn't need applause. They had purpose. I watched from the crowd, hat low, back row. No handshake, no speech. Just pride. And strategy. Because weeks before, I mailed Evan a letter. Not legal papers. Not threats. Just a photo. The one from our family cookout in '94. All of us together before things fractured. Scrawled across the back, in black ink. This is what you destroyed. You don't get to rebuild it. You get to watch it. He called once after that. Left a voicemail. Just 3 words. You were right. I didn't call back. Instead, I drove past the Red Line Institute every other Sunday. Watched the students shuffle in, tattooed arms, calloused hands, eyes that still had hope. Some had been addicts. Some had done time. Most had nothing but grit. And Riley gave them tools. Not just hammers. Structure. Routine. Belief. He was doing what I never did, leading without dominance. Teaching without expecting control. He didn't want to be me. That's why he deserved to win. One day, I'll hand him everything, the last deed, the final trust, the legacy in full. Not because I'm dying. But because I'm finally living without needing to own it all. But not yet. Because part of my revenge is watching it all flourish without Evan. Every article that praises the company now lists Riley's name, not mine. Evan's name. Forgotten. Every opportunity that comes in now goes to Riley or Kara. And every success Logan and Sons has from here on out. Evan has to read about it. From the sidelines. With no seat at the table. That's the judgment that mattered. Not prison. Not court. But memory. And a life where the door never opens again.